The Locked On Avalanche lose to the Minnesota Wild 3-1. Let's take a look at the stats and analytics. And was it really as bad as what we were watching? Let's take a look. Locked On Avalanche StatCast coming at you.
Your Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to a StatCast podcast of the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, flying solo here. I am Chris Maselli, your host for Locked On Avalanche. What I wanted to do was, following games, Kyle and I record our regular podcast, but I also wanted to start like kind of following that show, looking into kind of like stats, analytics, things like that. I like stats and analytics. I'm not going to sit here and say like I am like a stat head and I can, dive into deep analytics. I like them for what they are. Do they tell the entire story? No, definitely not. But they can tell part of a story. So that's kind of why I like them. I don't put a ton of stock into them. I don't put no stock into them. I think, like I said, they're part of the equation when you're looking at a team and dissecting a team or an opponent. And there's something to go on. Jared Bednar loves them. He is a big time stat head and analytics guy. And it's just the nature of sports right now across the board that, these kind of things are a big deal to teams. And again, I think they take them for what they are. You take them at face value. You can take them just as a different way to look at the game. So that's kind of what I wanted to do here. And, following a game, I do want to kind of do things like that. And how I'll do it is there's 3 or 4 main analytics. There's a ton out there, right? So I might change up the ones that I use, but mainly Natural Stat Trick is going to get used. HockeyViz is going to get used. Hockey Stat Cards I'll use. And Money Puck. Of course, Money Puck, because they have the deserve to win meter. And I know people hate that thing, which is exactly why I love it. So I'm going to dive into this, and I'm only going to do this on YouTube because it's a visual thing. And this is not going to be an audio thing. So this is really just for the YouTube crowd, because I'm going to share the sites that I'm looking at and kind of go through the different analytics. So the first one that we're going to bring up, and probably the first one that we're always going to use, is Natural Stat Trick. Because I think they do a really good job of breaking things down kind of in an easy way. And if this is something that you don't really understand and you wanted to kind of understand it, I will do my best. Again, I'm not like the expert in this stuff, but I can kind of look and decipher like the ones that I find important. There's a ton of information on here. Do I look at every single one? No. There's specific ones that I look at. I don't know if that's a fault or not, and maybe you have ones that you look at more than others, and that's fine too. So the way that Natural Stat Trick divides this, right on the top, you have your overview, and you can adjust your, this is right now it defaults to 5-on-5. So these are your numbers for 5-on-5, and we'll look at those too, and we'll look at all situations too, which of course include power plays and penalty kills. So you can look at like your Corsi 4. Here's your Corsi 4, Corsi against for the first period. And that was 12-8. I can't highlight that. 12-8 in favor of the Avs. So Corsi obviously is all shots directed towards the net, not necessarily shots on goal. Could be block shots, shots that miss the net, whatever. If the intention is to go towards the net, that counts as 1. And for the Corsi against, that's obviously the other team, in this case, the Wild. So the Avalanche, despite what I thought was a very not great first period, they led in Corsi 12-8. Now people will look at that and be like, oh, that's not a big deal. You were losing after the first, and that really doesn't tell the whole story. That's where Fenwick comes into play. That's where this FF is. Fenwick removes the blocked shots because they kind of felt like, well, block shot shouldn't really come into the equation because it's really maybe not that much of a big scoring chance. So they removed it. And when you remove that, you a lot of the times, all of the times, get a very different number. So look at that, 6-6. And I think that is more of a telling stat of how the first period went for the Avs. Now, again, that is 5-on-5. If we want to switch to all, 13-17 in favor of the Wild for Corsi, and Fenwick 7-13 in favor of the Wild. So that's your first period. Second period, this is again for all situations. Wild had your number in that 15-18, and Fenwick, they had your number 11-16. And then in the third, that's where the Avalanche turned it on, and they had to. 33 Corsi 4 and a 15 against. So you'd like to see this 33 in these other ones too, in 1 and 2. And in the Fenwick for the third, you had 26-10. And again, you'd like to see that number or somewhere near it. That's a lot. That is a lot for a period. You'd like to see, you don't want to see 7, you don't want to see 11. And that was telling. That was very telling for how the first and second periods went for the Avs. So overall, your Corsi 4 was 61-50, which is basically a 55% Corsi 4 percentage, which means 55% of the time the Avalanche were controlling the shots on the ice. And for Fenwick, 53% of the time they were controlling shots on the ice. You want to be ahead in that, clearly. Again, does that tell the whole story? No, because how are those hot shots, high danger shots, low danger shots? It doesn't tell you that stuff. It just tells you that shots were coming from which team and at what rate. And so for both of those, if you're over 50, that means you are taking more of the shots and more of the chances. So in the end, it was good. But again, that's for a third period where you had to step it up, which is difficult. So if you move over to the HDCF, that stands for high danger chances for, and you can look, and then HDCA, which is of course against. So in the first period, is it still on all? Yes, it is. So you only had 1 for the Avs, 3 for the Wild. In the second period, 3 for the Avs, 5 for the Wild. And then you flipped it in the third, 5 high danger chances for the Avalanche and 2 for the Wild in the second. Look at that percentage. Like for the third period, 71.5% of the high danger chances were coming from the Avalanche. Good. But again, this is in the third period when everything is you're pressing, and because you're down and you have to kind of force the issue. So that's kind of why those numbers maybe look a little bit inflated for the Avalanche, because they had to change their style and kind of go all out. If you scroll down a little bit, you're looking at, this is basically just a chart of for this case, it's default to Corsi. It kind of just shows you, the Avalanche, this side is for Minnesota. So they led in the overall Corsi. Again, you can just adjust it to all to see what it's basically just these numbers up here in a chart for you. There you go. The heat map, I call this the Halo map. It gives you a really good view of how things were going in the offensive zone for each team. And this is 5-on-5. And while that looks nice for the Avalanche, and it's not a ton there for Minnesota, if you look at the colors in the bottom, green means you had the puck in the zone. And the more you get towards the darker colors, for this case, for the Avalanche, the red, for the Wild, the blue, that's more of where most of your action took place, and more chances and more high danger chances took place. And if you see for the Avs, it's changing color in the middle towards the goal, which normally happens in these heat maps. You're going to get more action in front of the net, but two things here for the Avalanche. It's not very dark in red, and it's kind of away from the net. You want that to be shifted right in front of the net. See how the Minnesota one, even them, it's not right in front of the net. It's kind of, from the goalie standpoint, out and to the right a little bit, but theirs is a little bit darker. And we're, right over the Minnesota Wild logo. There's, it's turning dark there, but you'll take, slot chances are good chances, but if you're pushing all of that out and it's not right on top of Blackwood, and for the Avalanche, in this case, Fleury, it's not what you want if you're the Avalanche. It is on the defensive end. It's not what you want on the offensive end. You want that color to be right in front of the goalie and as red as possible. And it's not. So you have a lot of offensive possessions. That's what I said on the episode with Kyle. I thought the Avalanche had possession a lot of the time in this game. It's just once they entered the zone, it was a struggle. And I think that this right here shows that, because you got a lot of green, which means you have the puck in the zone, but not a lot of red, where it means you were getting a lot of chances. If you flip this to all, there's where it gets a little bit red. So the all obviously includes your power play and penalty kill. But look at Minnesota. Not when you have 4 power plays, you're going to have a lot of action right in front of the net. So that's more what you want. And it's going to darken up when you have more power plays, which the Avalanche, I think, had 3. So they're going to have more. But for me, again, that's a little bit too far away from the goalie. You want to see that kind of hovering that crease line on this map. Now, here's a telling thing here. You can also flip this over to Minnesota power play. That's pretty good. You have, this is where you're going to have a lot of your heat map spots here and a lot right in front of the net for Minnesota. Let me flip this over to Colorado. And we all know the issues Colorado has been having with their power play. And this kind of gives you a visualization of that. There's the Colorado power play. It's just where your players line up. You have 5 dots on here. And, this one out here, that's Cale Makar. That's Nathan McKinnon. This is Mikko Rantanen. Like, you can tell where the guys are. There's no movement. They're just sitting stagnant in where those dots are and not really moving around. If that's not telling, I mean, I would have to think Jared Benner's looking at something like that and be like, guys, we're just standing still. Nothing in front of the net. Again, I'll flip this over and Minnesota had 1 more power play than you. Do you think 1 more power play, there should be that much of a discrepancy between power plays? I can hear you saying no. If you go down a little bit here, these are the power plays in a chart. And I think these are very interesting as well. So each power play gets its own dedicated line. You got power play 1, there's power play 2, and power play 3. Now here's the time that they started. So power play 1 started at 2011. You want blue on your line. If you look at power play 1, 2, and 3, they all start with a red triangle. What's the red triangle mean? You lost the faceoff. This is another thing Kyle and I talked about. Was all 3 of those faceoffs you lost. You right off the bat, you're in your own zone. It just kind of sets the tone. But they gain the faceoff, clear it, and now 20 seconds are already off the clock. And we all know the issues that the Avalanche have been having with their power play. It's not what you want. But if you go down these lines here, so that's for power play 1, really nothing happened. You get to a blue square. What's a blue square mean? That means a block 4. So that means Minnesota got a shot on goal. And then you have a kind of like a diamond here. That's a shot and that's a miss. And that's right at the end. That's at 22:11. That was probably at 22:09. So you finally got a shot on goal that actually wasn't even on goal. It was a miss. Same thing for power play 2. Your blue triangle means you finally won the faceoff, but that's okay. That's nice. You lost the opening one. 30 seconds go by before you win one. And then you did have a shot. You won another faceoff. You did have another shot. There's another shot, won a faceoff, and then you had to block one of their shots. That one looks a little bit better, right? Like you have more kind of marks on your power play line for that one. You can take those. As long as you have shots for you, that's what you want to see. And then your third one lost the faceoff, then won the faceoff, and then nothing. And then again, right towards the end, you finally get a shot. So power play 1 and power play 3, kind of a disaster. Power play 2, you could live with, but again, it seems to be obviously a struggle for the Avalanche. So if you come down to the on ice, this kind of gives you individually, how we're talking about the Corsi 4, Fenwick 4, and Corsi against, Fenwick against. This kind of gives you a breakdown of the individual players and how they looked for their Corsi. I can zoom in a little bit here if that's kind of far away. So here's your 5-on-5, and so just take Arturi Lehkonen's at the top. When he was on the ice, he took there was 11 shots for the Avalanche. 11 is not for him. The 11 is for the team, and for the against, he was 12. So he's basically 50-50. Cale Makar is 21-12, Corsi 4, Corsi against. And then so that's good. 21 and 12, that's really good. You want to look at the percentage. So his percentage was 63%. So 63% of the time, the Avalanche were taking shots against Minnesota when Cale Makar was on the ice. So you look at two things here. You look at both sides of that. You look at who's good and who's bad. So Devon Taves, again, this is 5-on-5. That's really good. 23 and 13. And all of that, that's kind of deceptive. 2-1. That's not a heck of a lot. Drouin is almost 50-50. He's 15-4, 16 against. Mikko Rantanen, 23-4, 10 against. Nathan McKinnon, 22-4, 10 against. So that's good. Like, so your top line 5-on-5, you can look at that and say, like, they were kind of controlling play on 5-on-5. If McKinnon is 23-10, Mikko is 22-10, and Lehkonen 11 and 12. He got moved around a little bit. But actually, his Ross Colton, I'm sorry, was 15 and 6. So that's pretty good for your top line at 5-on-5. And the second line, remember, you're touting that second line after that game that they had last game and how good they looked. Different story in this game. Lehkonen 11 and 12, just went over him. Middlestat 9-4, 14 against. That's not what you want. And then Drouin 15-4, 16 against. So that top line, or excuse me, that second line didn't really recreate what they had in their previous game. And if you go to all, things switch up here. All situations, Lehkonen bumps up. He's on the power play, so that helps his numbers out a lot. So it kind of flips it for him, 26-4, 21 against. And Middlestat, he's still below 50. He's at 11-4, 14 against. Drouin, his go up because he's on a power play, 29-4, 19 against. So it kind of, again, just tells you a story of how things are going for those individual players. And with a lot of power plays in this game and penalty kills, you're going to see the numbers jump like they did for those. So for shift reports, this last thing we'll do with natural stat trick. Again, this kind of gives you Corsi for, Corsi against, and Fenwick for, and Fenwick against for the lines. And again, we'll go back to the Drouin, Middlestat, and Lehkonen, how they did so good in the last game. Then 5-on-5, only 6-4, 9 against. When the last game was what? It was like 28-4 and like 9 against Edmonton. Like they were not Edmonton. I'm sorry. Who the heck did they play last game? Why am I blanking on who they played? I'm going to bring it up real quick because it's driving me crazy. The Stars, duh. So against the Stars, they were the team that drove play. It was unbelievable, and we were loving it. And we're like, hey, let's roll that line out again. And they couldn't replicate it. They couldn't replicate it. So that is your stuff for natural stat trick. If nothing else, that power play heat map speaks volumes to me. Volumes. All right, let's get to, we're going to bring up, let me share. What are we going to do next here? I think we're at HockeyViz. Nope, I don't want that. Let's share our HockeyViz tab here. Okay. So this is, I'm going to bring this a little bit more. There's a couple things on here that I like. They're pretty quick. One is the shot tide, as they call it. And the NHL website used to have this on there. They call it a flow something. It wasn't a flow chart, flow stat. I can't remember what it was, but it was basically this, but they did it in real time. And you're basically just getting like the flow of the game. So, if for in this case, Minnesota's green, Colorado's purple. And as Minnesota's has the puck, it's going in the green. And as you go down, this is as the game is going on. This is basically just who has the puck, right? And I just like it because it kind of gives you an idea of who's kind of in control. And as you can see, and this always happens, just goes back and forth. It's kind of like a slalom, but you see a nice little push here for the Avalanche. You go down a little bit, right in the middle of your screen there. There we go. Is some back and forth here, but it's kind of even. And then bam, like huge in the Avalanche for the third. Again, because they had to. And they even let you know when a puck rings off the net with the ping. So that's always nice to see. They tell you who scored the goals, where they scored the goals. A couple pings here for Minnesota at the end. That was the empty netters. But it kind of just gives you a nice look on who kind of controlled the puck and pace of play. And again, like I would say for the most part, even leaning towards Colorado. So that's good. That's good. That's kind of what you want to see. The other thing, there's a couple other things. Oh, so the 5-on-5 shots. This is kind of like a fun thing to look at. If you look in the top left, it says dull. So that's not where you want to be. And the top right is good. The bottom right is fun. And on the bottom left is bad. So it's kind of like a chart of, and the red line kind of going diagonal. You want to see like Sam Girard is in between the good and fun. And so is Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon. You want to be on that side of the line, because if you're on the other side of the line, you're either dull or bad or a combination of the both. And you see all the Avalanche players are in black and all the Wild players are in blue. So just based on that, you just look and there's a lot of blue to the right side of that line. So they were playing a lot better than the Avalanche guys like Arturi Lehkonen, Casey Middlestat, even Cale Makar, and Taves, Drouin, Middlestat. All those guys are on the left side of that line. And the only guys on the right side of that line, like I said, Girard, McKinnon, Rantanen. Manson was right kind of hovering on that line, right smack dab in the middle. So it's kind of just like nothing. And Colton and the guys that are kind of towards this dull, there's a lot. Parsonen, Anala, who didn't play a lot, Parker, Kelly, Kiviranta, O'Connor. So it's like on one hand, like you see all of these charts that we're throwing out and all these numbers that you're throwing out, and they look good for the Avalanche. This kind of gives you more of an idea of how those plays were happening and what it looked like on the ice. And for a lot of the guys on the Avalanche, like, yeah, you can get a shot, and that counts towards the charts and the stats of the chart. I just said it. Shot categories. Put that one up with was it Kiefer? Yeah. In the shot categories, but no, like it's not what you need. More guys kind of where your Wild guys are. Yeah. So one more, and this one is let's see. It kind of gives more of the power play. Well, I'll show you the Minnesota one first. Here's a Minnesota power play, and look at all the action there that they're getting. You can just look at that. You don't even need to know what the key is here, but this is all the action from a Minnesota power play. Let's take a look at the Colorado Avalanche power play. Nothing. And does that not line up with the heat map we saw in Natural Stat Trick? Those are exactly where those green circles were on Natural Stat Trick. There's just that's amazing to me when you have that kind of talent out there, and you're not really doing much. So that's what I'm talking about when it says it tells the story, because that's one that definitely does. Couple more here real quickly. We're going to get to the hockey stat. I can't talk this morning. Hockey stat cards. There we go. Let's share this one. Come on. This one I like. It's a very simple visual, and all it basically does is tell you, hey, if your lines are going, you have a line kind of right down the middle where the 0 is. Excuse me. If your lines are going to the left, it's not a good game for you. If they're going to the right, that's a good game for you, essentially. And then you can dive deeper into that and look at the colors for it. So if you want to use Josh Manson, he's at the bottom. That's not a good game. So your purple is team defense above average. Your average is 0. He's way to the left of that. So they give you a score. I'll get to the score in a second. So he's minus 2.09. That's his score for defense. And offense, he's on the left-hand side of that too. So his team offense above average is also in the negative. So that is an overall bad game for Josh Manson. If you look at someone kind of like in the middle here, let's take Ross Colton, because he's on both sides of this line. So his defense was good because his defense is going to the right-hand side of 0. His offense is not. His offense was to the left-hand side. So you can look at that and say, like, defensively, Colton was okay. Offensively, didn't pitch in too much. And then if you go to the top, you can look at guys like Nathan McKinnon. His defense goes to the right a little bit. It's not like it's huge. And offensively, when you score a goal, you're going to be to the right side of that line anyway. So you can look at this and say, like, okay, who had a good game offensively? Who had a good game defensively? Guys like Taves, McCarr, tough game offensively. Defensively, had a pretty good game. And then you can get to the full game scorecard. And right here, you can see game score. So they take all of those numbers. If it's, like Josh Manson for the negative, we'll just go to Josh Manson here because he's probably right at the bottom. His game score was a negative 2.93. That's in connection to 0. So if you're near 0, you just had a whatever game. You were out there. And if you're in the plus, that's what you want to be. And, you have guys like Ogren who are 4.29. That's a monster game. And for the team, you see a lot of Minnesota Wild right here before you get to your first Avalanche player, Nathan McKinnon, which is a 1.41. And a lot of that is because of the goal that he scored here. So if you want to see the Minnesota one, look at the difference. A lot of almost everybody to the right side of that line, in the majority of the right side of 0. And again, compared to the Avalanche, where it's kind of all over the place, or even leaning towards most of the guys on the left side of 0. So again, that's why analytics are crazy, because if you're looking at just natural stat trick and you're looking at just Fenwick and Corsi and you see the shots favor the Avalanche, and you see a heat map that's green, but it's not really a lot of red. Like, you see some good things here, but in the end, did it matter? No, because Minnesota is a team that played more sound defensively, have way more guys on the defensive side and offensive side than you do Colorado. So there's that. And the last thing we'll get to is always my favorite. Let me get to, come on here, the money puck wheel. Playoff wheel. Absolutely love it. And we'll finish it up with the deserved to win meter, because that's everybody's favorite. So all this is just your percentage of the outside ring here is your percentage just to make the playoffs. And this is to make the second round, third round, finals, and to win the cup. And right now the Avs have dipped below 80% to even make the playoffs. 80% of making the playoffs is you have an excellent shot of making the playoffs. But I think that, it's just a little uncomfortable for Avalanche fans to see that. Excuse me. And because they're not up with like the Winnipeg's 99.6 or the Oilers 98.2. I think because maybe Avalanche fans are kind of used to winning. And even though 80% is good, 79.2, I think a lot of people are looking at that as like not good enough. And I would agree with you. They're still a playoff team, but are they that team that's head and shoulders above kind of opponents? Not right now. It is a game-to-game thing for the Avalanche. And, how it's played out since the turn of the calendar is win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. It's probably another win, lose. Like, they've alternated win losses. That's what you're getting right now from the Avs. The last thing we'll do here is the deserve to win meter, because I love it. So you'll see this kind of updating in real time. They simulate 1,000 games with average goaltending. And there you go. 1,000 simulated games with all the stats taken into account. 55% of the time, the Colorado Avalanche win this game. Obviously was not the case. So again, I go back to the very beginning of, the stats don't tell all of the story. They tell something of a story. And, you can take, and I'm sure the Avalanche do this. I'm sure all teams do this. You can take things out of this that you can work on, and you can absolutely take things from this that that need to improve. The power play charts, I think, are just jumping off the page to you, especially when you toggle it between the Wild and the Avalanche and just see the difference there. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, yeah, that's where we are for the Avalanche when it came to their game against the Minnesota Wild. Hey, if this trend holds true, you are playing the Winnipeg Jets on Wednesday. So if you're alternating wins and losses, this one's going to be a win. Take it to the bank. So Kyle and I will definitely be talking about that when that happens. And tune into Locked On Avalanche for anything else that's breaking or anything else going on in Avalanche Nation. So hope you enjoyed it. So we'll probably do this because, like I said, I always go into these sites after games are over. So I figured why not just put it out there, and anybody else that's into stats or wants to kind of get into stats and look into things, welcome aboard. If there's anything else that you stats that, like I said, like stats that you like looking up and kind of put a lot of weight on or into, throw it in the discussion, and we'll talk about those too. All right, everyone. So that's going to wrap it up for the StatCast, and Kyle and I'll be back probably tomorrow with a fresh episode. So thanks for tuning in. See you later.